So as an example, if you come into a room that you stay in, it's always chaotic inside of your room. And you come in and one day, everything is very organized inside of the room. Everything is fixed. And you go to your mother and you say to your mother, okay, but did you fix it? No, it fixed itself.
Years back, there was, I think, somewhere like in America, they found some bones that were buried. So this scientist came out and said, "This is it. This is the missing link between animal and monkey." And they took this bone as if it was a fact, and it was being, I think, publicized in books. If I'm not mistaken, it was even used in textbooks in universities, and they found out it was a pig's bone, just a standard pig that had died there. How could they not have known this with the equipment? So, but that was being, for, as you said, for years.
If you really look at it in a materialistic way, the world, there is no evil and there is no good. It's just materia. You just have things here. To say that this is evil or this is not evil, you need an objective standard for that. And if you don't have faith, and they recognize it themselves, if you don't have faith, you don't have an objective standard for what is good and what is evil.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Inspirable Podcast for a Change. I'm your host, filling in for Brother Shahid Nathan. Before we had a while back Dr. Abdullah Al Sueidi, and we spoke about the proofs of an existence of a creator, of Allah, and that there had to be, we mentioned things like if there's design, there has to be a designer, creation, there must be a creator. We went through the various logical, rational proofs on that. Now, today we're going to discuss things that are related to doubts. Some people have doubts in regards to why is there evil, and okay, if there was a God, then who created him, etc., etc. So we're going to go through some of those. But to start off with, we're going to start with the doctor, of course, talking about what are doubts in general and how should we, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, deal with these kind of doubts, that especially when it comes to matters of faith. So no further ado, I welcome back Dr. Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Good to have you back on.
Nice to be here again.
So last time we had a very nice podcast. We went through the whole, and we obviously would encourage people to go and watch that if you haven't seen that, on the whole proofs of how there must be a creator, there must be a supreme being, there must be a God out there. So today we want to address, as I touched upon, there's some doubts that people may say, okay, yeah, it makes sense, but A, B, C, D, E, they put some barriers in between them. And I guess, as I said, we can start off by talking about how should we generally deal with doubts when it comes to matters of faith.
First, Jazakallah khair, nice to be here again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think we have to first look at different categories of things. So one thing is that you have thoughts about things. Another thing is wiswas. And the third thing is doubts. So having thoughts, this is something that we as human beings always have. We always have thoughts about different things. We are constantly thinking and so on. So that people can have thoughts about their religion and they can think about questions inside of them and so on. This is not something strange at all, that people can have those kind of thoughts sometimes. It doesn't mean that you have doubt about the religion. I don't know if I'm a Muslim or not. You just have thoughts about things and you need answer to questions. So this is one thing. The other thing is what is called wiswas in Islam, and this is when shaitan tries to make you think about things, or come with doubts, or come with different thoughts that you can think about that are satanic, to be, and it's from shaitan. He tries to maybe it can be related to your wudu or your salah, that you don't know if you prayed or not prayed, or he tries to make it hard for you to pray, or it can be about faith, about your faith. So he instills these kind of doubts in you. It does not mean that you have the doubts, even though it can be pushed on you. So that is another thing.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think what's important to also point out is many people, when they get these doubts, they think, oh my God, I've left Islam. I'm no longer a Muslim. And we know that the Sahaba, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, some of us, we have these thoughts about Allah that we would like to destroy ourselves, like we want a life to be over. And the Prophet ﷺ told them to say, Amantu billahi amantu billahi wa rasuli, that I have, to say when these things come, I believe in Allah and His Messenger. So it shows that if the Sahaba had some of these doubts, that they said.
But that is not really doubts. It's more like thoughts, or so That's why we have to distinguish between them, because the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, when they told them about that they felt that they really hated these thoughts.
Yeah.
The Prophet ﷺ said, ذَاكَ صَرِيحُ الْإِيمَانِ. This is true faith.
Iman.
Not that you have the thoughts, but that you don't like the satanic kind of thoughts
Yeah.
that Shaitan tried to.
So when you have to worry is if you're having these kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
that-
This is.
And you play upon them more.
Yeah,
start to
when you
entertain them.
really start to question yourself, you start to question your iman, you don't know if I'm a Muslim or not. So this is when it becomes really dangerous. But the other things is how we as human beings usually work, that we have questions. One thing is that when you really strengthen your faith, and you also know how to think about your faith, what you can understand and what you can't understand, a lot of these thoughts will go away straight away. So when you have strong faith, you have like really yaqeen in your heart, real certainty in your heart. And at the same time, you know how to have a true belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you believe in his names and his attributes, and you know the understanding of the names and the attributes, and you worship him, you love him, you fear him, and so on. But you don't go into questions like how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. So we can learn we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-Sami' and al-Basir, that he hears everything and he sees everything. And it's easy for us to understand the meaning of that. Allah sees everything that happens and he hears everything. So he hears me and he hears people that are outside of this place and in other countries and so on. I can understand that. How this is not something that we can understand. We can't understand the how of the questions. That's why you should just leave out the how question. If you understand how to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a correct way, what you can understand and what you can't understand, it's much easier for you to deal with these thoughts. You just take these thoughts away and so on. When people don't have the basic knowledge, it's easier for them to go from thoughts to doubts, or from wiswas to real doubts and so on. So having strong certainty based on real knowledge about Islam will be like a protection from these kind of wiswas that people can get and so on. So Shaitan has always tried to give people wiswas. This is something that happened with the Sahaba, like we told, that Shaitan can come with these kind of thoughts and so on. So it's nothing new. But in this age, today, what we can see is that there are so many thoughts out there and ideologies out there and doubts out there that was not there before. So people can spread doubts about everything in this age. Before, it was usually you have certain kind of things that people are talking about, but not other things. Today, people are talking about everything.
Well, I think as well, before to be exposed to those doubts, it'd have to be a certain television program that might come on once a month, or a one-off documentary or something. Now it's like at our fingertips. Everywhere. And it's everywhere, and everyone can spread them. So now anyone can talk about anything. You can just open your phone, you start a YouTube channel or Instagram, TikTok, or anything, and you start to talk about things very quickly. And this is another thing. Before, people used to talk, especially most people were living in villages and so on. The one who was talking is usually like the teacher. You have maybe an imam or another one, if you're from other religions, like a priest or something that was talking, that people were listening to. But today, you can listen to anyone about anything. So this information overload that people can have today, can lead people to doubts, because they don't feel certain about anything. And also, there's a lot of disinformation today that is based on psychological methods of persuasion to make people persuaded. So we can see like commercials. They use different psychological methods to make you convinced to buy their products even if you don't need them. So there are certain areas where you can study in psychology of persuasion and so on to make people persuaded about things that you shouldn't be persuaded about. And this is also about ideologies. So different political parties and different organizations and religious organizations, so on, they study these kind of things to try to have this kind of influence on people's thoughts. So
the issue that we see today is more dangerous than it used to be. We always had the problem with shaitan. People can always get thoughts. This is not something new. But today it's an information overload that we have that make it more important than ever to learn about our religion, and also to always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be firm on the religion, and really try to have an understanding of religion. It's a difference between having information about something and to really understand our religion, have fiqh, have understanding of our faith and so on. So this is what we should try to strive for, so we can get this kind of protection for all of this information overload, disinformation and waswas and so on that we see today. I think this is a very, very important issue today, to be honest.
Some things that come up when it comes to these doubts is the person may say, okay, that sounds rational or it sounds logical, but I need evidence.
Yeah.
For me to have faith, I need hardcore evidence for me to believe in this.
Yeah.
How do we address those kind of doubts or those kind of things that are put forward?
Yeah, I think a problem that we see today is that people say that we need evidence. Of course, you should not believe in anything except you have evidence for it. But what is an evidence? What is an evidence? So some people, they say, I only believe in science. I only believe in science. I only believe in scientific evidence. The only thing that I can believe in is when scientists have said this in a scientific peer-reviewed article, and so on. And when people say this, it sounds like, oh, wow, this person is very scientific and very rational and so on. But in the end of the day, I will say that person, 95% of what he believes in is not based on science. Yeah. What we hear and what we see, what we perceive with our senses, what we hear from others through news and so on, this is the main information that we have. Things that we perceive with our senses, things that we can hear about, information that we get from others and so on. This is the main sources of information. And science is used in certain areas, and it can be very good to have scientific knowledge, but that's not the only way to have knowledge about something. So as an example, if you come into a room that you stay in, it's always chaotic inside of your room. And you come in and one day, everything is very organized inside of the room. Everything is fixed. And you go to your mother and you say to your mother, okay, but did you fix it? No, it fixed itself. It fixed itself. Would you believe in that? No, you would not believe in that. Would you require scientific evidence for that? No. Because you have something that we call, as Muslims call it fitrah, and you have this natural disposition to have some forms of knowledge about certain things. We call necessary knowledge, like causation, that if something starts to exist, something happens, then it has to have a cause. Something is organized, something is ordered, then it has to have a cause and so on. This is something that we know straight away. And I talked about the proofs for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence before, and science can strengthen these proofs, but we don't say that you have to prove something inside of a scientific journal or something like that, because science today is only talking about the natural world, the material world. It's only making studies on biological systems, physics and chemistry and so on. We can say that through science, we can understand that the universe is fine-tuned, it's very organized, it's very perfect. We as human beings are created in a very designed way. We can understand that from science. The step after that is, if something is organized, something is fine-tuned, something is designed, something is created, then it has to have a creator, a designer, and so on. So this is just pure logic to believe in that. Do we as Muslims believe in a creator just because of blind faith, that someone said to us, you should believe in a creator, and we believe in that? No, we have proofs for it. And this is what we talked about in the last lecture. When it comes to other things in religion, we can understand through logic and through rational thinking, through evidence, that there has to be a creator. He has sent prophets to humankind, and we can see proofs for prophethood. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was truly a prophet. He came with different signs, it came with different proofs and so on that showed that he was a prophet. And then we believe that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, since he was truly a prophet, he was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, has knowledge about everything, then we believe in what he told us. This is the evidence itself, because we believe in him because he was trustworthy and he had information from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just as we believe in people, we have faith in people that are trustworthy. Most of the things that we have knowledge about today, and most of the are things that other people told us. We believe in what they say because they are trustworthy. So we believe in what our parents told us about certain things. We believe and we have faith in what other trustworthy people told us about things that happen. And we don't only always seek to see the things ourselves. So if someone went to another country, you went to a country, you told me about things that happened there, I won't say, no, I don't believe it until I go there by myself, because I have trust in you. This is what we as Muslims have. We have trust in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have trust in the Quran, which is the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah tells us, and when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, we believe in it. So this is the evidence itself. The problem with people that say, I only believe in science, first of all, they don't only believe in science. No one only believes in science. You wouldn't even know your own name if you only believe in science. That you wouldn't believe that many things that we have, these are not scientific proofs. These are things that people tell us, things that we see and experience by our own senses and so on. Things that we use by rational thinking. So evidence is much broader than just science. Do we have evidence for what we believe in? Of course. That's very important in Islam, to have evidence.
It's funny how you see everything in life, like you mentioned, people say that's impossible. How could that happen by itself? But when anything you mention to them,
yeah.
But when it comes to creation of the heavens and the earth,
yeah,
they're willing to say, "Oh no, that one it just happened by a series of events, explosions, and gases and atoms and what have you, and here we are."
I say that no rational being would ever say that this cup came about by itself. Impossible.
Yeah.
If someone would say, yeah, I believe that it could happen, I would say, no, you're not really believing in what you say. This small cup, they would never say it was possible. This microphone, anything like that. But they say about things that are so much more complicated, fine-tuned, designed, and so on. And they say that's possible.
But then, of course, they can never explain where the first atom came from. However they try to explain everything, where did the initial atom come from for all these things to happen after?
Yeah, they say like Big Bang, they say that it's like we can't see what happened before Big Bang. It's impossible to understand that when they talk about Big Bang and the origin of the universe and so on. So they themselves say that it's impossible to reach knowledge about what happened before that. That's why they want to stop. It's like, oh, it just happened like that. Yeah.
Well, crazy. Yeah. But so we have that issue, don't we? We have a lot of people where they say, like science has explained everything.
Yeah.
So we don't even it's not necessary to have faith because all the answers are in science.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, science is a very important method. One problem that I can see with some religious people, when they feel that they are threatened by these kind of questions, they're not threatened by science, they're threatened by people using the word science to refute them. So they say, oh, science can answer all the questions that religion used to answer before, so we don't need religion. So when some people that are religious, when they hear that, they start to talk bad about science. No, science is not good. Science is like that, and science is like that. We should admit that science is a very powerful and strong method to learn about things. In Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls us to reflect upon the heavens and the earth, reflect upon ourselves, see around us, and use methods that are scientific in that way, to learn about the universe, to learn about ourselves, to learn about our surroundings and so on. These are scientific methods to be used. So science goes hand in hand with Islam. The problem is when people say that we can only believe in that source. We can only use one source and we cannot use the other sources of knowledge. That's a problem. And also when some people treat science as it's one package that is that everything is on the same level of certainty. So you have certain things in science that are extremely certain. As an example, we can take this water here. It's H2O, like, so you have a hydrogen and you have oxygen, and you know the atoms exactly. And this scientific fact will not change ever. And it will not change. Yani, you will not come, some scientists will say, no, water is not, is actually something else that we don't know about. Or they would say that gold atoms, they will talk about atoms and talk about these things in a way that is certain today, and it will be certain after 100 years and 200 years and so on. But certain things in science is not certain. It's not 100%. So you have some scientific theories that people come with, and other scholars that come with other scientific theories, and then other scholars, and they refute one another, and it can be different paradigms that they say. So in a certain era, scientists believe in that, most of them believe in that scientific theory, then they change and they believe in another scientific theory. Sometimes you can find maybe 10 different theories in one issue, and all of them are refuting one another. So this is not something that is 100% sure, because if it were 100% sure, you can't have all of them at the same time.
Well, that's the whole thing, isn't it? When it's a theory,
yeah,
it's kind of a study or a concept or someone's theory. It's not a fact.
Yeah.
So you have the Darwin's theory.
Yeah.
No one comes out in theory and calls it mainstream Darwin's fact. You know, it's a theory.
Theories in natural sciences can be certain. There are some theories that can be certain, so they are on different levels, but it's not the same way that we use the word theory in modern language, like in everyday language. We say, oh, it's just a theory, it's not a fact. It can be a fact and it can be a theory at the same time in natural sciences. But not all theories are scientific facts. And we can also see in many cases, they have a difference of opinion in many things. And there are, especially in the things that you can't really study straight away. So when it comes to medicine, as an example, you can use medicine and you can see the effects, and you do it one more time and a third time and a fifth time and so on. You can see every time the same kind of results. But when it comes to origin science, things that happen in the past, like the origin of the universe, the origin of species, and so on, this will not happen another time. This is something that happened a long time ago, so you can't make another test and a third test and a fourth test and so on to be certain about the things, in the same way that you can study practical science, things that you can see and touch and test one time after another and so on. That's why we will see that there are usually more difference of opinion when it comes to origin sciences, things that happened in the past. So scholars have a difference of opinion. We can take this as an example with evolution theory. Evolution theory was not accepted. Then it became accepted by a lot of scholars. Then it became refuted by a lot of scholars. Then they revisited it. Then it became refuted one more time and so on. So it has a history, the Darwinian theory. They have changed it throughout ages, throughout the time. And still, there are a lot of scholars that are refuting it. There's a web page that have over 1,000 scholars that are all PhD in natural sciences that say that they don't believe in evolution theory. So how can you say that science approved it when you have 1,000 scientists saying, no, we don't believe in it? And you can also see that when it comes to science, sometimes that there can be scientists are not objective 100%, because science can't talk by itself. Science is a concept. Scientists can talk, and scientists can be influenced by different things. You can be influenced by the grants that you get. If you get grants, you get a lot of money to make your science, your research, then maybe it will have and it will affect your opinions. The same thing with social sciences. It will have a lot of effect if it's political, you have an ideology and so on. So if this will have an effect, then it will on your studies, it will have effect on your results.
Just as you were saying that, I was going to say something. I've been waiting to say this, but then you mentioned that it's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that they can manipulate.
Yes.
And I mean, I can't remember the finer details, but I remember years back there was, I think, in somewhere like in America, they found some bones that were buried. So this scientist came out and said, "This is it. This is the missing link between animal and monkey," and they took this bone as being, that's it. It's that's it, and it was being as if it was a fact, and it was being, I think, publicized in books.
Yeah, in evolution.
If I'm not mistaken, it was even used in textbooks in universities, and they found out it was a pig's bone.
Piltone, man.
It was a pig's bone or something. In the end, just a standard pig that had died there. How could they not have known this with the equipment?
Yeah.
So, but that was being, for, as you said, for years.
Yeah.
And it was published in university textbooks.
Yeah.
So also you have to take some of these facts that we found the missing link. Like you said, this origin kind of science, so-called discoveries, with a big pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Because if the best universities in the world, like Oxford and Harvard, can be having this theory in their textbooks, teaching their students, and years later it's found out to be complete nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a pig that died on a farm in wherever it was. So this is also very important for people, because that would have, for many people, that would have been, oh, I knew it.
Yeah.
We finally have the answer of the origin of the species,
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Also, that there's a difference between real science, what is published in real scientific textbooks or in peer-reviewed articles, and what is popular science. So as an example, we can take the bones that they found or skeletons that they can find from what they call is like ape-like humans or humanoids that lived millions of years ago and so on. What they really found is like a small bone here, a small bone there, and so on. But when they go out publicly, or they teach it in school books for young children, they make it like this kind of ape man going in the woods and going on four legs. And they make it in a way that make it seem to the general people that this is how they really looked. But they haven't seen all of the soft tissues of the which color it had and how it really looked. They only have like a small bone here and a small bone there, and so
like many of the dinosaurs.
Yeah,
they would find certain bones and they would make a certain head to toe perfect.
Yeah,
this is what it looked like, and then 20 years later they realized, oh, actually it wasn't even a carnivore. It had no teeth, and it had a long beak, and it completely changed its form because they're just, they've got A and Z and nothing in between. So they have to make up all the other letters to make a full alphabet.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you see one of the most famous that you probably learned about when you went to school, called Lucy. They say it's like a humanoid kind of creature that lived 4 million years ago, that is closest to modern apes. They're very close to a modern ape. So it looked like kind of a half ape, half human being kind of animal. If you look at what they found like 3 or 4 ribs maybe, or something like that, and some other bones from it. And then if you go to the school books, you will see the whole creature going around in the savanna of Africa, and it looks like it's half, They haven't seen that. So this is also very important to see the difference between real science and popular science, or what they try to convey to the general people that usually are deceived by these things.
I think they even had, I think if I remember, a scientist came out with the homosexual gene.
Yeah.
And pushed it, and it was being taken, and then at the end they found out that he was a homosexual, and the whole study was pretty much made up to, push his opinion out there.
Yeah,
So
that happens too. Especially, what are the things that you should be a bit careful with when there's money involved, when there is ideology involved? These are like religious issues. Like evolution theory is very important for people that are atheists or people that are very secular, because they know that the design that we can see in living beings is a proof for a designer. So they say, no, evolution theory has disproved this. So they're really sticking to it just because of ideological convictions. This is what they even can they can say that this is the case. They themselves. So when there's a lot of money involved, there is a lot of ideological tenets and so on involved, you should be a bit more careful. We can also see when it comes to some medicines that it's the same thing, that they produce different medicines and so on, and there's a lot of money that has been invested in these medicines. So these medical companies, they are making a lot of things that are unscientific because they want to make a lot of money through it, you know. So yani, you have to be careful when it comes to these things. But that doesn't mean that science is not a good method to reach knowledge. It can be very good if it's made in the way it should be made.
Another doubt or that's thrown out there by people when it comes to faith is like, if there is a God, then why is there so much suffering? Why do people die? Why is there murders and rapes and massacres or whatever it may be? All these horrible things that happen, so much evil. Why does he allow these things to happen?
Yeah.
That's something they often throw out there.
So we can say that when it comes to the doubts that atheists usually throw out, they're either things that are going back to the evidence, that they say that there's not enough evidence, or they talk about science. So that is one part of the kind of doubts that they have. And the other one is to talk about the attributes of God. So they say, okay, you as Christians, Muslims, Jews, theists, that they say that you don't only believe in a creator that created the heavens and the earth, you also believe in certain attributes of the creator. You believe that God is all powerful, all knowing, and all good. He is all merciful. So then they take these attributes of God that theists believe in, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and they say, okay, you believe that he's all powerful, so he has power over everything. He knows everything that happens. He knows that all these evils are happening in the world. And you say that he's all merciful, so why does he let these things happen? No, we can't believe in a God like that. This is like one of the main doubts that they usually raise. So either they talk about the proofs for God's existence, or they talk about this. This has also been called like the rock of atheism, because this is like one of the things that they really stick to when it comes to atheists, of different reasons. One of them is because it's very emotional, especially if you talk to a person who is suffering himself or herself, having some kind of disease, having someone that's close to them that has these diseases, living in a war zone, and so on. So they say they know that it's a way to reach out to the emotions of people. And we as humans, if we study like psychology or persuasion, we can see that people are usually convinced through emotions, and then they try to find a way to say that, to convince themselves through rational thinking. So we're usually affected with emotions. You talk in an emotional way, and this is like, it really has an impact. And we start to believe in a thing, and then after that, we try to come with some rational explanation for it after that. This is how humans usually work. So talking about science and so on, it can be a bit, it doesn't really reach out to everyone. But suffering is something that is very close to everyone. You see people suffer, you see wars and so on. So this is a way that they try to reach out to people. But there are many fallacies in this argument, to be honest. One of the things is that they are talking about the world as it should be some kind of hedonistic paradise. This should be a place where everyone is happy and everything is good, and no one should be suffering and so on. This is how it seems that they perceive the whole world. But we as Muslims, we don't believe in that. We believe that this world is a test. It's not a place, it's not a paradise. We are here to do as many good actions as possible. This world is a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us, and he tests us with good times and bad times. So it's a part of the test to go through suffering. And we can also see that many people, when they are suffering, they are usually coming closer to the creator than people that have a lot of money and everything is just going well in their life and so on. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned. كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَن رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. No, the human is going beyond all boundaries when he sees that he is istaghna, that he's not in need of anything, he's not in need of his creator and so on. When people are suffering, when you feel sick, when you are in a, maybe like in a war zone and so on, you should come closer to you, to your creator. So when people are going through hardships in life, it's more common that they go back to the creator than people that are living in luxury and so on. So this is a fallacy when it comes to how they look at life. And it's also a fallacy how they look at the creator. They're only talking about like God only has 3 attributes. He's all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-merciful. We also believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish. We also believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakim, the all-wise, that tests us. We believe in many attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you believe in God in the way that we as Muslims believe in God, it's much easier to understand why there is suffering in the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran himself talks about these things, that people have been suffering, the prophets have been suffering, the prophets have been going through tests and so on. This is something that is a part of life. And we believe that usually those who are most tested, or those that are most tested, are the prophets themselves. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ بَلَاءً الْأَنْبِيَاء ثُمَّ الْأَمْثَلَ فَالْأَمْثَلِ. Those who are most tested of everyone are the prophets. And then those who follow their path most, and then those who follow their path most. So when we see that we are going through hardships, we can say, alhamdulillah, inshallah, it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I go on the straight path. Allah tests me with these things, and when I will have sabr, I will have patience, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the reward to those who have sabr, patience, without accounting. يعني it would be without بغير حساب. What was the best way to translate it? It's like يعني
you cannot.
There's no limits. There's no limits of the reward that you can get.
Boundless.
In accordance to the patience you have, you will have the reward. So this is also a way to look at it, and we see that the real reward is in paradise. And also on the Day of Judgment, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that people that have been living a very a good life without having pain, without suffering, without any disease and so on, they will be standing on the Day of Judgment and look at those who went through all of these hardships, and they would hope that they will go through the same kind of hardships, because they see all the reward they have, that they are cleansed from sins and all of these things. So on the Day of Judgment, they will have it better than those. So that's another thing to look at it.
Could we also say that the fact that whatever happens in this world that looks as evil or is evil, that there is an element of benefit or wisdom that Allah knew to allow it to happen, because nothing Allah creates is 100% evil.
Yes.
So we may not be able to fathom or realize, sometimes we do later on, but at that time we may think this is a completely evil thing, but there's actually a wisdom or a benefit that will come out. We may see it, we may never see it.
Yeah.
So that's it also.
Yeah, that's another thing, and this is what we can see many times. As an example, like if we look at wars can be terrific in many ways. It can be horrible in many ways, but it can also lead to better things after them. It can lead to more restorable peace after. It can lead to other things that can be good for nations and good for people and so on. When you just look at it at the moment itself, you will say, no, this is horrible. But after that, you will see that maybe in the long run, it will lead to something that is better. And we as humans, we look at things usually in a very narrow way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything from the beginning of the universe until the Day of Judgment and paradise and hell and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. We usually look at things in a very short sense. Usually we have like historians, when they talk about things, talk about a history of something and go 100 years back, you say, oh wow, he's looking at it in such a broad way. And still you don't see all of the different components, and you don't understand everything that is really happening and the good things that can come out of it and so on. So yeah, and also I think another thing is that you look at people that don't have faith, they still have to cope with the evils in the world and the pains and suffering and so on. And people that are believers have can be much more resilient to cope with these things and suffering. Just think about it. If there are two persons now that got cancer, and they got the doctor says to both of them at the same day, you're going to die after 3 months. The one person is a Muslim and the one person is a non-believer, doesn't believe in God. The Muslim thinks, okay, Qadar Allah, I will die. I know that I will die. Inshallah, paradise will be much better. Now this period of time, 3 months, I will suffer, I will feel pain and so on. It will lead me to be, the sins to be erased. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive my sins. Inshallah, I will come closer to Him. And you think about the suffering in that way. The other one is like, and this is my paradise. The dunya is my paradise. This is where I want to enjoy. Now I'm going to leave the dunya. And the last time in the dunya, in this life, is just going to be suffering. It's pointless. And also for them to talk about what is evil and what is not evil, if you really look at it in a materialistic way, the world, there is no evil and there is no good. It's just materia. You just have things here. To say that this is evil or this is not evil, you need an objective standard for that. And if you don't have faith, and they recognize it themselves, if you don't have faith, you don't have an objective standard for what is good and what is evil.
That's funny, because the same people who use those arguments will say to you, if you really go down to nitty-gritty, is rape and murder and incest and all these things bad? And they'll say, well, who decides who's bad, you know?
Yeah. They're relativistic.
But they pick and choose. They will never usually come out and say those things to you.
Yeah.
But if you got down the nitty-gritty with them, they would say that to you. But
Yeah, and also
they're going to call people to atheism, saying like, you know, you can sleep with your daughter or son or whatever, or whatever it is. But they believe that's, if that person wants to do it, and why not?
Many of them don't really think about what atheism leads to. And it leads to that to nihilism. It leads to relativism, that everything is just relative and so on. If you really go to it, it feels hard to say it. It's all up to human beings. You don't have an objective standard. If you believe that genocide is good in another person, you can't say that this person is right and that person is wrong objectively. I can say that I think it's wrong, and the other person, I think it's right. But you don't have like a judge that can say, no, you are right and you are wrong in this. But we as Muslims believe in a creator who created all human beings, so we have objective standards for what is right and what is wrong.
You know, ending on that point you mentioned there about we as Muslims believe in a creator. So you also get those people who come and say like, okay, it makes sense maybe that there's a creator, but then who created the creator?
Yeah.
So that's another thing they like to throw out there.
Yeah, and I think also this goes back to not really understanding any theistic theology at all. It's not just about Muslims, that it's also Christians and Jews. None of us believe in a created God. So all of us believe that God is eternal and God has always existed. So to say, it's really like you are saying right now, I believe that God is eternal and God has always existed and he is uncreated. So I say, okay, yeah, but who created him? I just told you that he is uncreated. Why do you ask a question that is in opposite to what I just told you? It's just like I would ask you, are you married? Okay, you're married, but if you would not be married, you say, no, I'm not married. And I say, okay, but what's the name of your wife? But I told you I'm a bachelor. I'm not married. No, you didn't answer the question. What's the name of your wife? You're asking the wrong question, you know? Because the question doesn't have any real meaning when you ask something that goes against the essence of your belief itself. So we as Muslims, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternal, that Allah Azza wa Jal is al-awwal, always existed, al-akhir, that will always exist. So asking who created him is a wrong question. And also, you can understand that the universe itself, it started to exist, so it has to have a first cause. It has to have a first cause. If you say that the first cause himself had a first cause, then that would have a first cause, and it will never start.
Infinite, never stopping.
Yeah, infinite regress that they say. And this is impossible. So it has to be a first this is like they usually mention as an example to refute this, is to say that if you would say to a soldier that fire the shot, but don't fire it until your officer tells you to fire it, and he can't tell you until the officer that's above him say it, and you continue like that forever, he will never fire the shot. It has to start somewhere, someone who gives the first order and so on. So this is not really an objection. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that shaitan comes with this doubt, mention it. And we as Muslims, we should nasta'id billah azza wa jal. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him for help. We should say amantu billahi wa rusuli. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messengers, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, and that Allah azza wa jal is al-awwal, al-akhir, and so on. We mentioned some of these things that the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned and the scholars have mentioned and so on, and inshallah it will go away. So there's a difference between people that have this as a kind of a thought from shaitan comes with it, and those who are like non-believers that try to spread this kind of doubt. Both of them happen, but I can't really see why it's an objection, because you're not really understanding what I'm saying. You're just talking, I'm talking here, you're talking there, Yeah.
We pretty much come to the end of the questions I had. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to end on before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I can go back to the first thing that I was talking about. We're living in an age right now that there are a lot of things, information that have been spread. It's more important than ever, especially if like you're a new Muslim, you're practicing Islam, that you really try to learn about your religion, focus on Aqidah, focus on learning things with proofs, with evidence, to strengthen your faith, to have it like a shield, and learn how to think in a correct way, how to understand the religion in a correct way, and inshallah ta'ala you will be saved from a lot of these doubts. And as long as you strive for it, as long as you hate those doubts, like the Sahaba said, the Prophet ﷺ said, ذاك صريح الإيمان. So don't feel anxious and so on. Feel alhamdulillah, I'm striving, I'm struggling with myself, I'm struggling with my faith, and inshallah ta'ala it will go away and you'll come to paradise in the end, inshallah ta'ala.
Hope to have you again soon.
Inshallah ta'ala. Allah yabarak feek. Allah yasalam. Jazakallah khair.
And also for the viewers, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, we've had a lot of important answers to those kind of... When you look at them, after hearing the answers, you realize they're silly objections and silly questions, but they can sometimes hit somebody and really cause doubt whether they're a Muslim or a non-Muslim. So hopefully whoever's watching this has been able to benefit from it. If you're a Muslim, you're able to push them away. And if you're not a Muslim, hopefully it's made you think like, yeah, this is the right answers. Let me have a look at Islam. Maybe I can find all my right answers. And of course, we will both tell you, as coming from a non-Muslim background, that you truly will find all the answers for the questions you need about life, about afterlife, that you will not find anywhere else, 100% guaranteed. So with that, we hope that something has been inspirable for you. That's why we call the name of this podcast Inspirable. And until next time, inshallah, I leave you with greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum.